Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, the show where we relive the highs and lows from the most recent weekend's football in the Premier League. Joining me on today's show is Zachary Gelab. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very, very good. Been a busy weekend and busy week last week, so looking forward to this week. How are you?
By busy, that means booze laden. I haven't seen the guy look not dishevelled in at least a week.
It's getting bad. I was out for the count about 3 times in 1 week. So.
Right, enough of your problems, because I'll tell you who has real problems. Steve Bruce. Okay, and he is today's talking point. Of course, we're going to do the talking point. We're going to do our winner, loser, and moment of the week. And if you agree with us, hit that like button. And if you disagree, get in the comments where I will be for the first hour. Now, after his 1000th game in charge, ended in a 3-2 defeat to Nuno Tottenham, I thought we could open up the show, Zach, with a little bit on Steve Bruce's career in numbers, let's say, because there's been a lot of toing and froing online about whether he deserves more respect / time for his accomplishments in the game and how he's handled himself while at Newcastle. But first, I thought I'd ask you, Zach, if he was to be replaced, who would you like to see come in, or who do you think would do a good job in his stead?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few interesting options. Now with the money that Newcastle have, they could maybe target a better manager than previously. The big 3 names at the moment seem to be Frank Lampard, Eddie Howe and Steven Gerrard. I was also thinking maybe if he was if it was a possibility to join Crystal Palace, Lucien Favre could have also been an option. But I think all 3 of those are pretty good hires. I think maybe Frank Lampard seems to be the most likely, with obviously him not having a job at the moment and what happened at Chelsea. And I'd like to kind of see his career progress, because I still can't quite make my mind up yet on the level of manager that Lampard is. I think Steven Gerrard's really interesting, but would he want to give up the Rangers project to start a brand new project? Is he not waiting for to go to a club that already has the better players? And as Eddie Howe, I think Eddie Howe's always going to be a good hire. I think you know what you get with Eddie Howe. And for this next stage of Newcastle, I don't think he would be a bad manager at all. So out of those 3 names, I think all 3 are okay, to be fair.
Yeah, they of course are the bookies' 3 favourites. That might change in the weeks coming up. Okay, but enough about his replacements. Let's get back to Bruce then, or potential replacements, because you can't deny that his longevity in the game has been impressive, if nothing else. I mean, the 21-22 campaign is Bruce's 43rd successive season either managing or playing in the English League, which is unsurprisingly a record. And in that time, at least as manager, he has presided at the helm of 10 different clubs, 5 of them in the Premier League. And his top tier highlights include securing 2 top 10 finishes in the Premier League with Birmingham in 2003-04 and Sunderland in 10-11. However, that was a long time ago. And if you're a defender of Bruce, the rest makes for difficult reading, let's say. Because of the 33 managers to have managed 200 or more Premier League games, Bruce's win percentage is around 28%. That is the second lowest, only worsened, if that is a word, by Manchester United former teammate Brian Robson, who sits on around 27%. But surprisingly, he's actually averaged longer than his average Premier League stay at a club in Newcastle, which, the mind boggles given the amount of bad press that has been served up during his time there. I mean, he's lasted 97 games at the time of writing. His average Premier League stay is 79 games. So let's see if he makes it to 100. I think the next one is the next game is Crystal Palace. It's looking increasingly less likely. Newcastle will want to safeguard, or their new owners want to safeguard their investment, won't they, by making a change as soon as possible, with the club still winless in the Premier League. I wanted to tackle the argument that he's not had the resources to aim any higher than struggling for relegation. Now, according to SpotRack last season, Zach, they had the 11th biggest wage budget, and in the last 3 years they have spent £131 million while only offloading £32 million worth of players. Do we think he could have got higher than 13th, or could any manager in the realms of possibility have done a better job than Steve Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, if there are definitely managers out there that could have, but whether they would have gone to Newcastle is a different shout. I mean, if you're saying they've got the 11th highest wage bill and obviously they finished 13th last season, that's not terrible. I think that's not too far from where they were, I guess, projected to have been with their wages. It could have definitely been better, right? Like this summer's transfers of spending all of your money on Willock is for on a player who obviously was amazing when he was there, but it was obvious it wasn't going to continue like that. It kind of felt maybe a bit too romantic, if anything, as to why they signed him. Especially when they've essentially got issues all over the pitch. Again, 40 million on Joe Linton a few seasons back. During that time, it seems like it was going to be it would have gone better than it has at the moment. So there have been a lot of errors. I'd like to know how involved, obviously, Steve Bruce is with these signings, and whether it's more of a, back then anyway, completely different now with the new owners.
Well, Joe Linton was supposed to be Mike Ashley, right? That was a Mike Ashley.
Well, there you go. There you go. And that's something that I guess Steve Bruce has kind of had to deal with. But there have also some of the football when you watch Newcastle play is so bad. So bad in all areas, in attack, defence. At times it very much seems like give Alan St. Maximin the ball, let him have this free role and let him just run at people. And realistically, that's not a way of you staying in the Premier League. But at the same time, I'm also, you think what other manager would have joined Newcastle during this period where it was already quite rough with the Mike Ashley situation. I mean, yeah, I understand both sides, but I kind of look at it and think, yeah, Steve Bruce, it very much is just... it's a sad way for it to end, because he's a Geordie as well, isn't he, right? So, like, his hometown club, everything like that about him kind of finishing it the way it is quite sad.
It feels like the Premier League kind of just outgrown a manager with his skill set who is very personable, is capable of putting out a solid team, I guess. But, yeah, the Newcastle haven't shown any of the sort of tactical versatility that even teams in the bottom 10 the Premier League are starting to move towards, in terms of pressing numbers, in terms of how interchangeable their shape is, getting the best out of existing personnel. You're right, it's definitely down to performance and not just results, because of course he did emulate Rafa's 13th or 12th place finish in the Premier League on roughly the same sort of budget, but the team was nowhere near as tight, I guess. Anyway, I suppose we could touch upon his reputation or his achievements in the Championship, because he is a prolific Championship manager and a perennial struggler in the Premier League. He's won 4 promotions to the Premier League, 2 with Birmingham, 2 with Hull. So maybe that is what is next for him if Newcastle do decide to chop him. And if you're an aspirational club in the Championship and you've got a bit of money, I mean, didn't really work out at Aston Villa, I guess. He's not a bad appointment. He's got a great track record of getting people to the most cash-rich league in world football, hasn't he? Anyway, let's round off this segment with his post-match interview. And this is what Steve Bruce had to say when Sky Sports asked him if, he'd still be in charge for the Crystal Palace game.
Well, that's for other people. That's for other people to decide. If I was reading everything and seeing what we're seeing last week, I might not have been here today. But look, my job is to get a few results. And unfortunately this year, whether you're a Newcastle manager or whoever manager in the Premier League, you haven't won in 7 or 8, then you become under pressure. That's the right word. So it's part and parcel of dealing with being in the Premier League. It's the big league for big boys. And I'll crack on and carry on as best I can until I hear otherwise.
This week's winners then come from at Snappy Chatty, who's put Liverpool forward after they demolished Watford 5-0 at Vicarage Road. I mean, it comes as little surprise given their rampaging form away from home, Zach.
Yeah, indeed. Liverpool are now the first ever English top flight side to score 3+ goals in 7 consecutive away games in all competitions. It was very, very, very impressive. And there was a bit of a hint of the 2019-20 season about it, with the front 3 of Firmino, Mane and Salah doing the damage. Salah has now scored in 8 consecutive fixtures, taking his league tally to 11 goals and assists in just 8 Premier League games. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about him. He's ridiculous at the moment. Obviously the best player in the world at this point of time. Roberto Firmino has scored the second hat-trick of his career as well in the Premier League in this game, becoming the only Brazilian to have netted multiple hat-tricks in the competition. And Sadio Mane also joined the Premier League 100 club with his 5th goal of the season. And the ball that is played by Salah outside of the foot
Unreal.
is stupid. It is ridiculous. Now, Sadio Mane, this is only the 3rd African player to reach that milestone of 100 goals in the Premier League after Didier Drogba and Mohamed Salah. It's also worth noting as well with Mane, none of his goals have been penalties. It's been
crazy.
very, very impressive.
That is really impressive. That is an underrated aspect of his 100. I think only Emile Heskey and Les Ferdinand scored more goals in the league without bagging penalties than Sadio Mane. So truly impressive, and not a happy return to English shores for Italian manager Claudio Ranieri, who suffered his biggest ever Premier League defeat in doing so. In fact, no manager's first home game in the Premier League has ended in a bigger margin of defeat. So that's a great barometer, great indicator of the job he's got on his hands at Vicarage Road. Now, ironically, Ranieri's win percentage against Liverpool at home in the Premier League stood at 80% before this. So maybe some optimists might have thought that the Italians setting up with a back 5 could have got at least a point out of them. But no, that wasn't the case. And when I saw Danny Rose playing left centre half, I did not hold an awful lot of hope for the home side. I mean, that 5-4-1, it was shut. Liverpool were great. They were dire. I mean, Watford's only hope of remaining in the league is probably if Ismail Assar absolutely goes off on one. I mean, they made quite a few signings in the summer, and that wasn't really present in their starting lineup, which is just never a great sign. Anyway, I just thought we could end this section by discussing our relegation candidates, because I put forward Norwich, Watford, and Burnley at the start of the season on our Sunday Vibes season predictions. It's looking like, Newcastle or Burnley might be scrapping it out for that 17th place. Who are yours, and would you change them at this point in time?
I think I didn't have Norwich in mine. I think I might have had Southampton, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back and watch it. And yeah, obviously, I'd probably change mine to put Norwich in there. They've at the moment they're not even playing to the level that they did when they were previously in the Premier League. But they have also played some quite difficult games in those opening 8 matches. It does have to be said. Watford, just the way they played against Liverpool was so bad. Like, I know it's Liverpool, you're trying to defend and maybe go on the counter attack, but it basically looked like limitation damage just from the kickoff. I think Newcastle or Burnley, I think it's a pretty good shout for that kind of third place.
Well, who's yours, guys, at home? Let us know in the comments below, and again, I'll hit you up in the first hour. Right, let's move seamlessly on to our losers then, Zach, and it comes from at K Grundy, and it's Manchester United. Somewhat predictably, we're having to talk about them for 2 weeks on the bounce because their league form continues to stutter. I mean, this time they succumbed 4-2 at the hands of Leicester City at the King Power, and it's worrying. It's worrying that Manchester United's home form falls off a cliff, because that is what has been masking an awful lot of deficiencies in Ole's entire time at the club, actually. Let's say. This was the first away league defeat in 30 games, and the first time the Red Devils have conceded 4 goals in an away game since April 2019. So like I said, Ole won't be wanting that record to go awry, will he? Now, should we put a little bit of shine on some Leicester players before we put the boot in to United's players / manager? Go on then.
Yeah, for sure. We saw the return of Iheanacho in the lineup, partnering Jamie Vardy in a 3-4-1-2. The Nigerian got Leicester back into the game after Greenwood scored a worldie. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. And he also pressed the hell out of a very tired-looking Maguire, who'd only just been rushed back from his injury. He also successfully squared it to Tielemans, who then also scored a worldie as well. It's a great game. Make sure you watch the highlights if you haven't already. Iheanacho, though, has now directly been involved in 23 goals in his last 26 games for Leicester in all competitions, scoring 17 and making 6 assists. That's really, really good for a guy that, when he first joined, wasn't in the starting lineup. We have to give a shout out to Yuri Tielemans as well, who, as I said, scored a fantastic goal on his 64th consecutive Premier League appearance. He was also very unfortunate not to get hit 2 with a shot from outside the box. It was more of a kind of with the inside of his foot rather than a strike to the left-hand side of the goal. David De Gea produced a wonder save, put it onto the post. And with James Ward-Prowse now missing out, the Belgian now has the longest active streak for outfield players in the league, as I mentioned, for 64 games. Very, very impressive. I think the next main thing for Leicester is trying to get him to sign a new contract before anyone else comes sniffing around for him. But the last 15 minutes of the game were pretty exciting, weren't they, Hamill?
Yeah, they're extremely fun, weren't they? 4 of the goals, 6 games came in this frenetic period. 3 of them scored by Leicester. And when Ayoze Perez is coming off the bench and registering 2 assists, you know that the result is probably going to go your way. 2 assists, more than he got in the entirety of the last campaign, by the by. Now, Rodgers' side just seemed to have an answer every time United, produced an individual moment of brilliance, which obviously they've become heavily dependent on. That is becoming the narrative around Manchester United at the moment, isn't it? And one that they are struggling to sort of course correct. It was perfectly illustrated, I thought, kind of Ole's approach or Manchester United's approach. The Rashford goal, it was... Yeah. Like Lindelof evades a bit of pressure and then plays a 60-yard wonder ball with his weaker foot. Defence splitting wonder ball, and Rashford times his run to perfection and finishes with aplomb. But then 54 seconds later, Manchester United switch off. Vardy makes it 3-2, and Leicester, from there on in, it was only 10 minutes left. It didn't look like the points were going to escape them. And Jamie Vardy, it's got to be said, that finish was absolutely emphatic. Lets it roll across his body. Scores it with sort of the outside of his foot. It was his 7th in 8 games. And we were worried about his form coming into this season because of the sort of tail end of last season. That was really bad, wasn't it, if you take penalties out? But it, once again, like in the 2021 season, has gone off like a rocket. And... when he's not fit, they have Patson Daka to come on. He rounded off proceedings with a little tap in, but it was in the right place at the right time. Now, you just touched upon it there. Maguire starting, he looks so rusty in this game. And it was a big criticism that was levelled at Ole after the game. And this is what he had to say in reply.
I picked the team, and Harry showed no reaction after what he's gone through, and for me that was, I hold my hand up if that doesn't work out, and sometimes it doesn't. And when we concede 4, it's not. I probably made a couple of bad decisions.
Yeah, I think he may be a dead man walking there, Ole. But the poster boy for their poor form is fast becoming Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, it's unsurprising given United made him the league's top earner on 480 grand a week. But with 3 goals in 4 starts, it's not as if it's really been that bad or his fault. He's doing his end of the bargain, you can say. It's how his place in the starting lineup has had an adverse effect on the team's balance. Basically, a domino effect, which we'll discuss in a minute. It's also worth remembering that he's 36 now, and in stark contrast to the title rivals that United are facing, whose forwards work like dogs, Ronaldo simply just doesn't have the physical capability to press like they do. For context, the top forward presser in the Premier League is Wilfried Zaha on 20. Ronaldo is currently averaging 2.7. Now, compared to the other sides like City and Liverpool, Firmino 19, Salah 16, Mane 14, De Bruyne 19, Ferran Torres 13, Gabriel Jesus 18. But everyone knew, United knew this, didn't they, Hamill?
Yeah, obviously their press is per 90. When you consider that Ronaldo is only averaging 2.7, fairly stinky, isn't it? But the payoff was supposed to be that Ronaldo scored a bucket load of goals. And like you said, he has largely kept his side of the deal, averaging a goal involvement every 111 minutes in all competitions. None of them penalties as of yet. But Manchester United / Ole, I suppose, aren't successfully covering for him in the way that his previous sides have. Without possession, they don't drop off successfully and form a compact block like an Atletico Madrid, for example. And with the ball, they just don't press in a coordinated way, which we've seen Manchester City and Liverpool take to new levels in recent times, haven't we? And the consequence of that is that the opposition play through them with ease. There was moments where Samare and Tielemans were just having a field day with these progressive 15, 20-yard passes where they were just bypassing Manchester United's midfield. And a lot of people will say that, Matic and Pogba are the problem there because they were the double pivot. It's their job to guard the defence. But they were having to cover an awful lot of lateral space because United have wide men that want to be wide, not come inside and provide extra defensive cover. I mean, Jadon Sancho is the perfect example of that, right? Who is definitely more forward than he is midfielder. And asking him to sort of track back, I just don't know, it's a waste of his talents, I guess. But if you've got Ronaldo, those sort of guys have to do it. Now, the shape without the ball, it just, the mind boggles. It was like a 4-2-4. If you pause any given frame, Zach, it was a 4-2-4. But let's go back to the domino effect you were discussing, because it is interesting and people will sort of jump down our throats if we try and level the criticism at Ronaldo. But this is obviously a combination of Ronaldo, Ole, and how he's being utilised and what is happening as a result of him starting at number 9, right, behind him.
Yeah, I mean, United's starting 11 is very, very impressive in terms of individuals, but very, very poor in terms of partnerships and balance. Now, obviously, they also had the injury of Varane as well and other players out, but the guys that were starting at Leicester was nearly their best side. Fernandez, though, is now being forced to do more running without possession to compensate for Ronaldo, as you mentioned earlier. And he's doing this currently on a really impressive 22 pressures per 90. However, he's then using a lot of energy and is less able to focus on what happens when the ball comes to his feet and when they're attacking. Considering his sensational performances since signing for United, the side should have really been continued to be based around him rather than Ronaldo. Now, Ronaldo's signing has changed this, as we mentioned, and United's best player now finds himself compensating for his countryman's shortcoming, basically diluting his own game to kind of help Ronaldo's. It also means Ronaldo has to play as a striker, which means Greenwood is playing out wide. And for his long-term future, you'd probably want him playing in the striker position. But it also then means as well that Pogba has been shifted back inside again.
Yeah, from that left flank,
Where we know that his best time recently at United has been on that left wing, and playing inside has been a bit of a weakness, if we're being quite honest. So we can also attribute some of United's central midfield problems to Ronaldo starting as a number 9 as well. And then, having spent £73 million on Jadon Sancho, he's going to have to start as well. And so where does that leave Martial, Cavani and Rashford?
That's a great question.
Of course, though, if it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that has asked for him and brought him in, then ultimately it's his problem to deal with, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, apparently Marcus Rashford's camp not overly happy with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's comments that he needs to prioritise his football from the weekend. It must be said, he did, put an awful lot of praise on the young forward in the same interview, but I suppose the optics not great, or just the way he phrased it could have been a lot more tactile, and now he's got to sort of deal with that reported unrest. David Ornstein of The Athletic saying that it went down badly with his camp, and that Rashford couldn't have put any greater emphasis on his sporting career. I mean, the shape he's in and the way he's recovered from a long-term injury, and the amount of appearances he put in for United last season at the cost of his own body, right? You would be annoyed if that was said about you at the start of the season, particularly when you're frustrated about not helping, about not, chipping in with the goals as your side continues to struggle. So I can see why he'd be annoyed with that. But we want to hear from you guys at home to round off this section. Is United's form down to Ronaldo playing at 9? Is it Ole's misuse of him, or is it more terminal for the manager? What has got to give? Let us know in the comments below. Right, we're moving on to our moment of the week now, Zach. I've got 4 here for you.
Oh, wow.
And it is Southampton getting their first win. Edouard Mendy's performance versus Brentford. The fact that the Newcastle fan who collapsed is all right now, and the whole way that the crowd, that the medical staff, that the players responded around that scenario. And Bournemouth, lovely to see them celebrate with photos of the David Brooks jersey, who, of course, has been diagnosed with cancer, unfortunately, in the recent weeks.
I mean, I think I'm going to give it to 2, actually. I think Mendy was great for sure, but I think, it has to go to the Newcastle fan and also the Newcastle doctor that was a fan and went over and helped him. And also the Bournemouth players celebrating with Brooks's jersey. I thought that was really lovely as well.
Yes, right you are. Nothing to pick between them. What was your moment of the week at home? Let us know on Twitter, on Instagram, or in the comments below. And me and Zach will hit you up. Zach, anything to plug before we finish the show?
Why not jump over to Snapchat? I'll be talking more about Rashford as well today. And also, you'll be getting daily content from us on there as well.
Wonderful. See you next time. Bye.